La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti to La Lanterna podcast. This is Fabrizio with my best buddy.
Hey, it's Matt. How are you doing, Fabry?
Had better days, but I guess let's go straight into the issue. The opener for Serie A 2023-24, Genoa lost at home 1-4 against an incredible Fiorentina.
I feel like we got punched like in the neck or something. It was just like a weird game. Like Fiorentina had some opportunities that were sort of befuddling how they continued to score in a way. But it looked like we weren't really ready for what they had, I think is really what it came down to.
That's right. I'm not blaming Gilardino himself, but obviously it happens. Besides the fact of his not being an expert yet, he's a newly upcoming coach and so on, and he prepared the match maybe partially because the players after the first goal was after 4 minutes. Second goal was after the 11th minute. So you can also imagine, like, these are kids, right? You would say, well, they're professionals and they should know better. True, right? Sometimes you're able, sometimes you're not. Unfortunately, it was a bad match, bad day for everyone, including Gilardino.
Yeah, I mean, I had the similar thing. I was thinking maybe we might fight back or get something out of it. And the disconcerting part of it is that we never really recovered. And to your point, like, you can have a great pre-match plan. You can have a really great way of going about a match. But when you can see 2 goals within basically 10 minutes, like most of that goes out of the window. I think the disappointing thing is that it didn't really seem like there was anything else that was coming up. I was really curious actually to see how we were going to handle, I want to say Fiorentina were playing a 4-2-3-1. But I thought that with our lineup and having kind of effectively like a 5-3-2 more or less, I mean, it kind of depends on how you think about like our wing backs essentially. But I thought maybe we might have more numbers in that kind of middle area of the pitch and maybe we could do something with it. I mean, I guess technically that math isn't completely math because a 4-3-2-1 also has 5 people in the middle of the park. But it really seemed like we were not in any sort of place to execute a game plan. I know like there were lots of comments. We were talking on the group chat a lot. Is it the defense? It kind of seemed like, oh my God, we've been talking so much about how great the defense were in Serie B. Was that just because we were in Serie B? Some folks were saying, well, we're giving the ball away too cheaply, and then that always sets the defense up for poor results. I think maybe both of those things could be true. But the thing that was probably the most disappointing out of everything was that we just didn't seem to have any sort of idea as to how to grow into the game. And I guess when you're 2-0 down and, it got worse than that, it's hard to grow into the game when you're that far behind. I like a lot of the fans' responses to the match. We had a really great showing, a near sellout crowd, a wonderful tifo kind of displayed at the Gradinata Nord. A lot of fans were saying, we have to move. We have to kind of go on to the next one. And I think generally that's correct. I do think that it's a weird thing because the Coppa Italia match just several days before that, we were on this euphoria. Like we have Retegui, we have all this opportunity. We're playing in a way and being more competitive against Modena in a way we weren't last season. And people could say it's Modena, but like the rebuttal is, yeah, well, it wasn't like that last season. They actually were a decent side. And so, to have like this kind of bipolar emotion thing is a little bit strange. But I just think when you watch that match, it was an absolutely like welcome to Serie A moment. And I think a lot of the Genoa supporters I know, and I've seen react on social media, like there's that one famous meme of, I think like a female kickboxer or something. She's like completely bloody and she's smiling after the match and doing post-game interview, and they have like the Genoa logo on her face and stuff. I think there's kind of a little bit of jest that you take this with, and you have to hope that we learn and get this sorted out for the rest of the season, but it really truly looked like tactically we were not prepared. And that can happen in a game. Better that happens in the first game than in a game we need to win to stay up or something like that. But it still is disappointing nonetheless.
Fiorentina, to their side, has been with Italiano now for 3 years. I know they have changed a few players, but not that many, and the core is still there. And you can tell because even this Biraghi, which even inside themselves are hating or, has become like this goal scorer almost to the
Yeah,
point of being the best, that his goal was like phenomenal. That it, probably
it
if
was a
he
very good
had
goal.
to,
It was a
it
good
almost
goal.
sounds like ridiculous what I'm about to say, but if he had to redo it, he wouldn't be being able to do it.
Right.
But to your point with respects to the tactics, yes, absolutely, the tactical aspect. But at the same time, I saw Gilardino changing the module 2 or 3 times from a 3-5-2 to a 4-3-3, and
Yes.
even that didn't change anything. But one thing that I have to say is the midfield is definitely our weakest point. Unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately, it's not fair even to say unfortunate, but the fact of re-signing again Badel was important, but at the same time is one of the slowest points in the midfield. That's where a lot of fingers are pointing. I disagree with the majority of fans pointing finger to Biraski when he's actually the only goal scorer. But I'm not saying that his performance should be saved based on his only goal. But at the same time, all that side suffered so much because of Brecalo, Mandragora, and Biraghi that were in super shape that day. Like on that side, they totally killed us.
I know.
And even on the back, sure, we had to have Biraski in lieu of Vogliacco because he was injured. But at the same time, one thing that we were sure about last season, this time around didn't work well. And at the same time, in 2 games, I'm saying this cautiously, but in 2 games, independently from whoever was the opponent, we've gotten 7 goals. And I think the issue is the midfield that is filtering through way too much. Even when we went with the 3-4-3-3, we putting Frendrup as our regista, it didn't work well, even though Frendrup like probably is one of the least worst of the whole match, and he still didn't do a great performance in my opinion. Thorsby was horrible to watch. Martin and Hefty were annulled almost by their laterali, by the sides. Goodmanson and Iretegi, what am I going to say? The unfortunate thing is there was almost a goal by Iretegi, and they barely got any balls.
Well, yeah, you can't fault them at all. There was nothing really for them to do the entire match. The ball didn't even make it to the final third of the pitch. How many times when Genoa were in an attacking movement, it just didn't happen. I think like I personally really struggle with the Badel criticism, which I know is probably very unpopular among Genoano, but I don't understand it. I think that I can understand a concern with us starting a midfield player in his age as a prime player in a Serie A campaign. I can understand that. I don't understand him being, we got to ship him out. He's worthless.
No,
I think like this guy was also borderline player of the season for us last season. And again, we're talking about Serie B versus Serie A. You can say a bunch of things and, talk
he's
about
more of
players who
a
have
he's more of a Serie A player, right?
no, of course he is. I mean, he has that. I mean, if someone's making an argument that way, I think they're saying in this part of his career, maybe he's better in that capacity. But point being is he still has skill, he still has quality. And we were having some of this. I said a little bit of this last season. I don't completely, I think slightly differently about it. Like obviously we don't have Sturaro. Badel is old. Grotman is old and wasn't available anyway. You have guys like Jagello who don't really fit in that position. I like him as a player, but he just like we almost always seem to play him in a place that's not his natural position. Frendrup, you expect to be competent. Thorsby, you expect to be competent. Wasn't exactly there in the match. So I think like for me, the midfield, we could always use another player. I don't think necessarily we're fully equipped to say like we're replacing Sturaro or Torsby for Sturaro 1-for-1. Torsby has some real capabilities. He showed that in the Modena match, but I don't think that that's exactly the only answer that we have either. I mean, remember we signed Ilsanker last season. That guy's like, how old? Like these guys are never going to play beyond if there's an injury or something, and probably not even the Coppa Italia because we're going to need to have really competitive matches there. So you do have an issue with aging players in our squad. I do worry if really we're going to be dependent on Strootman and Badel to be regular starters week in, week out for us because of their age. But I still think it's a little bit harsh to say it's the midfield as a whole because I think something else must have been wrong. Maybe truly it is purely a personnel problem, but it looked like to me, looking at that match from the first minute to the last, that Italiano had figured out how Gilardino wants to play. He knows the type of constellations he's going to put out there. He knows we're going to start with 3-5-2. It might have rotating fullbacks so that we kind of flip over to a back four. We have done the 4-3-3 sometimes in the past, and he had exactly a plan. And how Fiorentina were pressing us, we were never able to get out of that. We just never were able to find a way to have an extra player or have an extra moment to break that press and to break that problem. And so you did have turnovers in the wrong places. You did have Fiorentina win the ball higher up the pitch. And ultimately, that I think the bigger issue, even among the chances that they created, was that we didn't have anything. We had nothing that we were able to get through on their side, except, obviously we got the lone goal. I do think maybe there's something to the fact we had to have Birashki step in, and you're usually used to having three guys who can communicate. But I think it's hard to solely pin this on the defense. It did feel somewhat eye-opening, I mean, I think I'm more a pro Aaron Martin person than most. I know it's only been 2 games. I believe Selvin Hefty has still many things to contribute. We obviously were without Voyako. Dragushin I thought looked pretty average. This was the first time I've seen him look not fantastic. I think like it's sort of, I had a moment like that during the middle of the match where it's like, shit, well, we've had Bonnie. He was like a gladiator in the worst of the Ballardini days, but also those days were horrible. And I'm not sure that was like prime central defending. And I'm not jumping ship on Bonnie. I know some people are saying he's not a world-class, or he's not a Serie A capable defender. I don't think that's true, but kind of had this cold water moment where it's like, well, Barashki's Barashki. I don't think there are many Genoano that are there to stand by his side, unfortunately. Just what it is. We've seen enough of this stuff from him.
Stems in also from the past, just because it was the team that got relegated. So they're unfortunately the Genoano the typical Genoano would always makes those things. Same happened with Criscito, that the majority were not pro Criscito just because of that. And I'm not that type of fan. I don't necessarily want to associate, and I don't want to believe, especially like if the new ownership is still seeing belief in looking at this player at least from a bench perspective because he has his experience and so on. Why not? Right? There must be a reason.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have to put some faith into Gilardino and how he's looking at the squad and what he's going to use. But I wasn't completely nonplussed by him being in the starting lineup. He was actually forecasted to be that player by some other groups before the game began. It just is one of those things where, like, you look at that, Dragoshin was amazing for us in Serie B. Is it true that maybe he's not ready for this level of competition? I don't know. I'm not ready to count really anybody out. It's easier for me to be upset about Birashki because we've been through this before. But I think, like, when you look at the whole of this, I come more to the fact I do obviously believe we need to strengthen. It's really difficult imagining us putting a lot of money towards a center back at this moment. I don't imagine we're going to do that, given we already have a fair amount of players in that position. I wonder on left back if we do end up getting Haps, if that's something that does get over the line. And then I think you're right to say that, like, it's somewhat of an odd thing to see Torsby coming in and still seem like we have a pretty big vacancy in the midfield area. But I think you just have to ask yourselves, like, I do think Milan Badal is a really good player, but if he is our starting midfielder every single match, I guess the expectation is it's Torsby and Frendrup are the guys that are cleaning it up, and not necessarily cleaning it up because I don't mean to say that he's not going to be winning possession or anything like that, but maybe we do need a little bit more from that side of things. And I don't know. It was a definite reality check. I think I am kind of expecting, I'm not sure about you, beyond Haps, I'm not sure how many other rumors are out there of players that we might sign. And it's hard to imagine that we're going to have like a big flurry of players coming in between now and when the transfer window closes next week. So I kind of feel like I'm mentally getting used to the fact that this is probably the Genoa team for the season.
Remember, there's 1 week left. We're recording right now on Wednesday. We'll probably have this pod out on Thursday or Friday, but we still have 7 days left to September 1st. Most of the exchanges and the last minute so on always happen in the last couple of days. I'm saying that, one, because I remember forever has always been like that. It's horrible that you have to wait for 2 months, but that's also you have to remember that we have so many players that we need to get rid of them. Otherwise, with that list that we have to present after the 1st of September, there's a lot of players that will be going in the stands. Like they are not able to be in our roster essentially, whether because it's the rule of the under 21, whether it's the rule of the under 23, whether it's the rule that it's a player that came from our youth, whether it's all this and all the extra comunitari, which are the ones from outside of the European Union. There's going to be a lot of players, and that means that it's going to also be not only bad for the player, not only bad for the club because they're having these wages. Obviously, there is also some discontent that is going to happen. You have these players like Aramo, Recoda. I'm just mentioning a few, but Yalcin, Yeboah, and so on, Puskas, and so on. Like, I'm not saying they're all going to go, but some of these have to go. And if they don't go, that might also block the possibility of getting someone. Having said that, as it is difficult to find players, a lot of players that are having the same issue of finding the right players, and that's why a lot of players are not being let go. A prime example is Zanoli, where he's one of the ones that he has not been let go. Okay, maybe also because Rudy Garcia is thinking to keep him, but at the same time, they were still looking for his replacement, which was Faraoni from Verona, who was not let go as well. There's a whole bunch of intricacies that are happening, or better, not happening, and that's why lately there's a lot of movements, but non-movements at the same time. Obviously, some teams are increasing the prices, and that's what's happening, for example, with Crispo. This is a young player, midfielder from, I can't remember, Fenerbahce or something. But at the same time, the good thing, surprise, at least from in my eyes, we've got an excellent player coming in from Marseille, which is Malinowski, which will definitely help us from the forward midfield or trequartista or whatever role that he might partake in our new formation or whenever he's going to be used. I still think that those two, that's one of the words that definitely Gilardino has said, not only in the press release, but also in front of everybody, saying we expected that there was going to be issues because this is what we know where we're lacking it. But anyways, all this to say, there are synergies between the coach and the club in order to understand where they need certain things. He, as in Gilardino, has repeatedly said, and I'm saying this for all the fans that were boosted by the calciomercato, the transfer market, the aim strictly remains 40 points. Anything else obviously is welcome, but he does not even saying that. He's saying our aim is 40 points.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's 3 points that we lost. The goal differential is not great, but it's way too early in the season to really care about that. It's a bad result. You hope it's not the omen of how the season's going to go. I didn't come away with this in the same way. So, like, one of the things that I'll say, and we obviously conceded 4 goals in this match, and you rightly mentioned we conceded 3 to Modena. So, like, something is not exactly right here. And I don't know if you remember this, but there's a moment in time where I feel like we saw this a little bit last season with how Giordino was kind of working through the lineup and trying to find the right balance. And we actually had a period where we did concede a little bit more because we're trying to open up play more and get away from some of the more rigidity that Blessing had put in place. So, there could be a little bit of the tinkering and trying to find how these guys are going to fit together that's happening. And I think also...
You actually bring one valid point that I wanted. Sorry, I'm just interjecting here 1 second.
Go ahead.
There are also new players coming in. So, and a lot in a way, if you really think about it. What I'm trying to say with this is every time you have a solid team, and what happened with Preziosi, where it was a different way he was doing it. Obviously, here we are buying players. We didn't really almost sell anybody, but when you're adding 3, 4, 5 players, that's a brand new dynamics to your point. That's why I was trying to say this because of the words that you were using. We need to also calmly wait and be patient. It'll take several matches before that routine, as you said before, like he's going to try a few different assets and tactical assets and so on in order to get that formazione tipo, as we say in Italian, meaning that formation, the typical, the right formation that he needs. And then even there, it's going to change based on also the opponent too, right?
Yeah, I mean that absolutely. Like it's gonna depend. This was sort of a new thing. I think Arthur Melo was making his first appearance in the Viola colors, and maybe that was a quantity we weren't sure how to kind of understand too. Like there could
That
have
was
been other things.
huge, a huge addition to the Viola
Absolutely.
formation.
Yes, I think like very much an obvious impact that he had on that match, and that's a type of a player that I mean, just frankly, we don't have, and that's a type of player that's going to completely change a game in that way. And he was probably their, I actually think he was their best player in the match.
Absolutely,
Um,
100%.
but what I was going to say earlier is like, so to all those same points, if you kind of look at this, and I will probably be doing way too much of this season, but if you're looking at this Serie A campaign versus the trying to remember, it was the 21-22 campaign or last season in Serie A. So that first match we played, 21, I think we're playing against Inter Milan to open the season, and we just
Yep.
got crushed. And I think we
Yep.
lost 4-0 or maybe 3-0 or something.
For nothing, I think.
That match, we were, I think, way more woeful than we were in this Fiorentina defeat. We did not have the right combination. We could not figure out how to really get out of our own half. It seemed like there was some miscommunications happening. Some of the goals maybe could have been avoided. But I remember, and maybe this is just me, but I remember watching that match against Inter, and it was like, oh man, we are going to be, even though Inter, like the class of the league, and were, I think they maybe went on to win the league that season. It didn't feel the same. So I think there's a way to be optimistic about this. Like it was obviously a terrible result. We have to have things turned around. We were just partying like 2 weeks ago with our result in the Coppa Italia. And I think we just need to have a little bit of, we need to look with open eyes and hope that, look, we are able to resolve some of these problems. It was a bad loss, but there's really nothing else that it will impact us. And it's not terribly surprising that we lost the match anyway. It's not like we went and played Bologna and lost 4-0. It's a little bit of a different kind of output. And we should be doing better than this. We shouldn't be finishing 4-1 to Fiorentina or the bigger teams, really. Hopefully that's not going to be our future every single match against the kind of bigger name clubs. And Fiorentina, really, it's generous to put them in that category. But I don't necessarily think that this is like, oh man, we are just like so devoid. That's why I go back more to the manager in this game. I really do. I am not personally, and maybe this is shocking, as much of a man, we've got to reset the team. I'm personally not in that mindset. I look at it and I think we got our asses handed to us, and it's because Italiano knew how we wanted to play, and we were able to get by with that in Serie B last season. But this, whether or not that's what happened, what definitely happened is after that match, there's a blueprint for how to beat Gilardino sides that every other squad can see. Maybe not every team has Arthur Melo in the midfield, so maybe it's not an easy thing for them to do. But the way that they approach pressing our entire team and figuring out where to kind of line up to make it really difficult. Because what I saw a lot of times when I was watching that match is there wasn't an obvious place to pass the ball. It wasn't like we were like having a creative idea and we just mispassed it or something. Like there was no opportunity. There was nothing there. And that's tactics for me. That's not players. That's not, we were missing skillful players or something, or players that are quick on their feet. Like we did not have space because they took it away from us.
That's right. And I still think that Gilardino will improve, and I still
I do
want to
too.
believe
Yeah.
that. I'm going to bring an example, and then we can probably close it here. But I want to bring an example, and a lot of people might not like these type of examples or comparisons, but I remember last time we came back from Serie B, it was very different, worse. Meaning we had been down, we were down there for a long time. And
Yeah.
this was with Gasperini. So Gasperini, another new coach that came up to Serie A. The very first match, it was sometime in the end of August, because we didn't usually start the season so early like now. And I remember this was against AC Milan in Genova. That was a match of Kaká, Pirlo, and so on. And we had lost 3-0. So essentially, the goal differential is the same. But at the end, that season, I'm not saying it has to happen equally, but as it happened that season that we lost 3-0, I remember it back then, we were 2007, we were thinking, oh my God, we're going to go back down again. We don't have that good valid team. We had people like Gasperetto, Di Vaio, Conco, Juric, but like no major names. Even eventually, then we had Borriello and so on. But they obviously we were playing against an extremely important AC Milan with Gattuso, Kaká, Pirlo, Seedorf, Gilardino. So like names that uh, Dida was the goalie. Anyways,
Yeah,
what I'm trying to
yeah,
say
yeah.
with this, what I'm trying
Famous
to say
team.
is at the end of the season, we were that odd team that was winning against the big ones,
Yeah,
and we ended 10th,
yeah,
first season in Serie A. So, having said that, I'm not saying that we're going to do the same, but it's okay to start slow. Especially, we said, and we have to remember, we're going to be playing against strong teams. That does not mean that we're going to do all the best and point for a victory, but it's okay.
yeah. Agreed.
Okay, let's go to a quick break and we'll come back to the second half with an incredible special guest. My name is Fabrizio Cardone and I approve this message. Welcome back to the second half of La Lanterna podcast. And we have a special guest all the way from my hometown. Well, not hometown, but anyways, where I live, which is Toronto. But I'll let himself introduce himself and where he's from, and also what platform or where we found each other. Welcome to our pod, Steve.
Thank you for having me on, guys. Yeah, no, my name is Steven. I'm a Laziale, one of the few, but one of the very proud in Toronto. So got the Lazio brand called the Laziali, and then my personal account just on Twitter that I run and go back and forth with. In addition to a few other things, I work for TLN, and I've started a jersey display company. So that's what keep me busy over the next little bit.
That's awesome, actually. So you talked about we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. So the jersey display and whatnot. Tell us a little bit more about it. So I've seen a little bit about it on with the Calcio guys. I've seen it with overall on social media. So what's it all about?
Yeah, no, essentially, first and foremost, I'm a fan of Lazio and of Calcio in general. So trying to display kits over the years has been quite the challenge, apart from the traditional, the hanger or the very costly shadow boxes. Then you run into the issue of, do I have enough space to do certain things? How am I going to get them to look good? So I kind of went back and forth for a little bit. And after meeting Immobile last summer, and I got two signed kits from him, I needed to get them display them in a perfect way. So I kind of went back and forth with a few suppliers, and was able to do a bunch of prototypes and finally get the product that is Display Pro today. So basically, it's just a sleek and new alternative and innovative design to get your kits up on the wall, cost effective, look sleek, minimalistic, and very easy to do. And the benefit to it is, if I want to wear that Lazio jersey right there that you can't see right now, but if you want to wear a jersey, put it onto the display, takes less than 60 seconds. If you want to wear it, you take it off, and then you can just put another one up. So it's very interchangeable, very easy to do, and it just allows you to kind of splice up the backgrounds or put your passion up on the wall. So new little thing I started up.
That's pretty awesome. Too bad that we can't. We'll put the links anyways on our social media and so on, because I think it's worth anyways to share anyone that is an entrepreneur per se.
Of course.
Especially around the world of culture. Matt, did you want to ask anything?
No, I mean, obviously Immobile, we've got different memories of Immobile in Genoa. But I love it's a cool initiative. My wife's always bitching about how many shirts I have, and they're always taking up the closet or somewhere else or something. And we've got different hangers and things now that are set up. So it's kind of cool to have it.
So from the closet, you're going to keep, busy, make all the walls busy. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. That's
a little pop of color, a little Rasa blue on the wall. Like, come on. I feel like it'll be my corner, I guess. Actually, yeah, I should probably be more upset about that than the closet, but who knows? I still like the idea.
It's just a small thing. Adhesive hook, or you get just a little nail, and then you put the hook in the wall. I'll show you guys afterwards. But yeah, no, it's very, very straightforward to do, and allows you to exactly what you just said there. Showcase your collection, take it out of the closet, and split up the walls a little bit. So
I like it.
Awesome. So Steven, the Laziali, tell us a little bit about it.
Oof.
So first of all, sorry, let me interrupt you first before you go on. But what are you talking about? There's only very few in Toronto or North America in general. There's tons of Laziali.
Tons of Laziali, yes. Obviously, we're trying to grow. We have a Lazio fan club in Toronto, so I gotta shout those guys out for sure. But compared to other clubs, obviously, I know like Genoa, for example, as well. Might not be as big as a Milan and Inter, a Juve, but definitely one of the clubs I think have done well in recent years. That I think is attracting a lot of interest from Saudi to what Lotito does, to making the Champions League again. Immobile, what he's done, Sergej Milinkovic. I think there's a lot of interest that's come in as of late. So obviously the fan base is growing, but with regards to like social media and stuff like that, there's a handful of guys. Like shout out, it's like Sean, Jerry, Vittorio, Alistair. There's a bunch of just the local guys that we deal with. My writers often and Roma Polo, very, very good guy as well, a very close friend of mine as well. We've worked over the years, past 4 or 5 years together now. So we're all over, we're scattered. Try to kind of find all the fan clubs. I know we got some guys in Montreal as well. And I'll try to kind of represent the Laziale that we can, where we
That's
can.
awesome. Yeah, we
Yeah.
got a little glimpse of Lazio type of base. Well, obviously, we started our pod just right at the tail end of 2 seasons ago. So that's when that was the sadness of our relegation or needed relegation. And obviously, then we adventured in the 1 year, only 1 year, as our slogan was with the City B. But we got to meet also, not sure if you had a chance ever to meet him, but Ferdinando from Kick and Cleats or what was this other platform? I think it
Yeah,
was like
Kicking Cleats,
Lazio Close, also the other
Oh, Lazio
platform.
Close, yeah.
I haven't
And
met him. I haven't met him in person, but I've seen the socials. So yeah, I've come in contact through social.
he's a good guy. I think he lives up in Barrie or around there, so it's not very too close to us, anyways. But
Yeah.
so we had some small glimpses about Lazio, but obviously because he's like a fan, kind of shares the fan with Frosinone and with Lazio, but obviously Lazio was the bigger, stronger one. But obviously for us in that moment was important about the Frosinone because of the Serie B scene. But anyways, so you talked about Sarri. I think if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2021, that's when he started to with you guys, and since then, I can only remember Lazio in the top comfortably in the top five. I would say, right?
No, absolutely, yeah. I came in 2 summers ago. I think it was a signing that was needed after Inzaghi had been there for a little bit. We tried the homegrown move, which seemed to be what a lot of clubs were doing, pulling in these former players of the club to take over, and that's what Inzaghi did. And we all know what he's capable of. We know where he's at now. We know why he's there. At Inter, we've seen what he was able to do when he was given the chance and able to thrive. But we needed another big name to kind of step up, especially with our rivals Roma signing Mourinho. We needed that big name, a big presence. I think Saudi was the right name for it at the time with his availability, what he brought to the team to kind of switch it up and give it new life, kind of like what you've said with Genoa needing to go down before we kind of get back to where we wanted to be. I think Lazio needed to get away from that 3-5-2, the 3-4-3, 3-5-1-1 that we had deployed for so many different years, and get back to what we saw a little bit with even Pioli when he was back at Lazio in the 4-3-3 and what we were able to do on the attacking side with Immobile. It needed to come back. So he was the right choice, I think, and he's proven his case. Obviously, we've seen what he's done even last year, finishing second, overachieved. I think everyone knows that. I mean, I don't think anyone at the start of the year had Lazio anywhere near top four. And again, this season, we're seeing everyone kind of count Lazio out of the top four and saying they're going to be a surprise flop of the season. I've seen on so many different newspapers and Italian websites. So I love to prove them wrong. I love to finish above Roma every single year and make them cry. So yeah, it's fun. But I think Sarri's done definitely a terrific job in Rome. And now that Lotito's kind of opening up the wallet to him to kind of accommodate his needs, definitely good. Definitely good things that.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to get your thoughts on the season because obviously like you've got probably maybe the biggest loss, I guess, is Milinkovic Savic, and it's still a squad that has a lot of talent. And I'm not sure any Genoa is looking towards the match this weekend thinking like, oh yeah, we can get one on Lazio. Like it's going to be a tough match. But I mean, does that change? How big of that move was that with him coming out?
So the way I look at this and what I've mentioned to a few people when we talk about this subject is if I look at any other player in the league, any other player on Lazio, we can look for a replacement. And, it might not be the same person, but we could find someone probably pretty close.
Yeah.
When you get down to a Milinkovic, I say not even in Italy, try to find anyone like him in Europe, in a top league, in a whatever, top 10 league, let's just say.
Yeah.
It's not doable. just not feasible right now with what he was able to do during his time in Rome. His physicality, his touch, his finishing, his providing on the creation side of things. Like there's just no one across the board that I see that he should be playing or he should have been playing for over so many different years. Like one of those top European sides, like the Real Madrid, the Barcelonas, whoever would have came in for him. I personally would have loved to see him playing for that. And he's from Spain. He was born in Spain. I would have loved to see him play for Real, just to like kind of see what he would be like playing with amongst and against like the top players from around the world. Fortunately, it didn't happen. I was obviously in Saudi, but obviously a massive loss. So when we get like someone like Daichi Kamada, who has definitely been good over the years, different type of player, more similar to Luis Alberto than I think Milinkovic. It's a very, very, very big ask. And the expectations are, we kind of have to lower those. Like my expectations of Kamada is just, settle in as soon as you can, find the base of what you're able to do and just do the basics for now, and then kind of try to take it up a notch, because thinking that he's going to be the exact same as Milinkovic or perform or create as much or score as much, it's just completely unrealistic. No one can fill that void that he left. So definitely a massive loss for Lazio. But hopefully, like the squad has gotten deeper now on a quality side. Quality depth is something that we've missed for so many years, and I think this year this summer I should say, with Lotito taking charge of the Mercato with Tare gone, he's done a good job. He left it a little late, but that's the way he does things. It's finally good to see that we're bringing in young Italian talents or talents from abroad to fill in that quality depth that Saudi needs to compete.
It was actually good that you said that about the Italian talent. So that first comes to mind is our Nicolo Rovella,
Yes.
which we have to say, as everybody has said, when players move on to different teams, treat him well, because he's a very respectful, great, talented kid, and I think he will give that quality. I mean, he's a growing player. He's obviously still young, but he's definitely. Do you foresee actually Rovella to be like in a starting 11 or more to be like a sub?
I think, like any new signing that comes, I think Kamara is one of those ones that it just needed to happen, because our current personnel, Basic, Akpa Akpro, any of the other center mids that we had when Milinkovic left, they were not going to be able to even come close to what Saudi needs for Saudi ball. Even despite being there for a year, 2 years of that under your belt, it still takes a special kind of player to be able to adjust to what Saudi needs. So someone like Rovella, I think, definitely has the talent and the quality to be able to do so. He's probably going to sit in the central defensive midfielding, like kind of as that regista that Cataldi currently plays. I don't think he's going to take him out of that position though for a few months, or unless Cataldi gets injured or Cataldi starts to really have a few off games in a row. Rovella would probably be that second, where I could see like the first month, 2 months until Champions League comes around, Copa comes around, and then we could probably see him get into the starting 11. And then it's just a matter of, for me, I love it. I love having the Cataldi, the homegrown talent, who's he was finally given that opportunity by Saudi that he wasn't really given by any other manager that's been there to date. He was just kind of that person filling the homegrown talent spot that needed to be there for Lazio. Right. And now he's actually grown into the role. He's kind of taken, I think he's the assistant captain now, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So like he's got a lot of leadership and a lot of quality. And someone like that on Lazio with a Laziali is very important, especially for us fans. So having him, but then also Rovella, who's able to kind of provide a little bit something different, a younger side of things, who's there for the years to come. Like there's a reason why we've just invested that large sum of money. I can't believe Juve have let him walk for that cheap, but it's good for us on that side. So starter possibly in the future. Right now, I don't think so.
Yeah, it was surprising to see him even on the Mercato, because you look at that long-term opportunity. Of course, like Juve, I mean, he's not going to get anywhere near the first team there right now. And even with Lazio, I mean, I think you're mentioning correctly, it's really more of a forward-looking decision. And I do think Kamada is also an interesting player with Lazio and with Sarri specifically, because having watched a little bit of him at Eintracht, and I'm sure you're familiar, of course, seeing him play last week as well. He's an interesting player. I mean, he's definitely, there's no one that'll compare to Milinkovic. And he's not really the same skill set anyway. Like I think the Luis Alberto comparison is actually really apt. But it'll be interesting to see how he slots in and how the rest of this team takes shape. And yeah, it'll be an interesting match for us. I think, speaking one of one, my memory of Lazio or from 2 seasons ago primarily. So it'll probably look a little different than what it was.
Yeah, well, but mine go back a little bit further because actually, I think I tweeted this out, or I might have said it on the pod. I don't remember where I had said it, but growing up, Genoa were that team that no matter what year, Lazio could never beat, or we would always tie. They were just that one opponent we could not do anything with, and that is now who Lecce is for us because we can't come close to Lecce. We score first every time.
Crazy.
It's
What
insane.
happened there, Stephen? That's good that you opened this up. So that was the opener of the season for you guys. High expectations. Obviously, sure, it was an away match, but at Lecce, winning 1-0, and then what?
Fall apart. Obviously, every team is going to say this, or every team who lost it was going to say this. But obviously, Sadi said we were not up to the cardio and physical level that we should have been, especially even having a retiro like we always do. At the same place for whatever I think the last 7-8 years we've been in Alonso, so I don't know exactly why we're throwing that out there if we're not at full fitness because how come Lecce is, how come Juve is, how come it just doesn't make sense. But again, Lecce is one of those teams who I think to break down Saudi is kind of to use his tactics against him, and Lecce is a very small but very quick and agile team who press very high and have a high tempo. So even with Di Francesco coming in there, it kind of suited the formation for him. What we saw him do at Roma as well. It fell apart, crumbled. The players like who came into the game, even Saudi was saying the people who started the game, we should have actually finished off the game when Immobile had that chance and Vicario, or sorry, not Vicario, a blank on the Falcone made that like incredible like save that he wouldn't even be able to make again if he tried. The extra game should have been 2-0 at that point, but the players who started like did not seem like they wanted to continue playing. So Saudi made those substitutions at just after halftime. It was like 5-10 minutes, and it's very surprising because he usually waits till like the 65th, 70th minute to make his first sub. He took I think Asleep Anderson and Laziali off like within the 60th minute, which was something that was like very interesting to see. But the new players that came onto the pitch, it was the same thing. Like kind of just struggled to get into the game. Our new signings struggled to get into it, and then surely but surely, it just eventually all came tumbling down. And within 2 minutes, we have that mental breakdown that always happens for us over years. So it doesn't matter the coach, doesn't matter the season, doesn't matter what time of the season it is, what game it is. You always find a way to have these mental lapses, is what they've called them in the blackouts. That Saudi says, is Lazio superficial? Are they not? I'm trying to fix it. And that's kind of where it ended off.
Well, I guess for better or worse, we can kind of commiserate with the blackouts because that was what the entirety of our opening match felt like was going on somehow. I don't know how that had happened.
Yeah.
I mean, this
goals were good though against you guys. Like watching the highlights back, I watched a little bit of the game, but then obviously I didn't watch the full thing. Watching the highlights back, like Bonaventura, like that pass was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like literally, it just took everyone out of the play. I didn't even expect that. It was one of those like Messi-esque passes where it was you expect three different things, and the thing that you don't expect is what actually happened. So credit to Fiorentina for those. But
I do think in a way the scoreline was somewhat harsh on Genoa in that aspect. But I think this match is going to be as Genoa, as we kind of mentioned earlier, we're kind of looking at this one in fear, like, all right, let's make a good account of ourselves. Let's make sure we get something from the match, at least in terms of opportunity. I think even expecting a point is something.
You guys are gonna be hoping for that. I think Saudi's probably been drilling into them like a drill instructor for this one. I think it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be pretty for you guys. I don't like to see it, but I think we're going to come out and it's going to be like we're proving a point at home in our first home opener, of the season. Like I could see it being one of those first half thrashings, unfortunately for you guys. But yeah, if it doesn't, it's not going to look good either because if Lazio comes out of this with just a point or nothing to show for it, there are definitely going to be some questions raised of both him and the squad.
Yeah, seeing Lazio lose in the opening round was not ideal, I don't think. For that exact
no, not at all. Not at all, because that means that two teams both kind of hurt in different reasons for different aspects and so on. Are going to so not only Genoa opener lost, bad outing and so on. Now it's an away match at Lazio, second spot from last year. So it's always going to be, oh God, we're going to have to step up the game here, right? Well, Lazio on the other side is like, okay, wait, we have to prove ourselves. We just stumbled upon I'm going to say quote unquote contender for relegation, but and losing 2-1. Okay, it was an away match. Now we're at home in front of our tifosi. We're going to have to make that difference. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit of a mayhem somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's also tough for us because our next three away games are Napoli, Juve, and Milan. So, it's not an easy start by any means by any team who's got these matches. That's why Lecce in general we were hoping for. We'll start off with the 6 points before we head over to Napoli at the Maradona, because that's obviously gonna be a tough one. And back to back weeks, going to Juve, that's what I mean. Like if we don't secure something against Genoa, we could potentially be starting the season 0-4, which let's just not hope for that at that point, because I would not want to be in Sadi's seat
Of
come the
course.
next game.
So having said that, so before we go into also the predictions and so on of the match, which we kind of already sort of started the highlights of it, but first I wanted to ask you, what's the vote you give to Lazio for their Calciomercato? It's not over yet. We still have, what is it, a week left?
Yeah, I think it's the
Are
30.
you,
Yeah, we're on a weekish. 31st, I think, is the last
so
day.
first, I guess, is are you expecting any more new signings? And secondly, up until now, anyways, what's the vote that you would give to the Calciomercato?
Yeah, like I think if you would have asked me a month ago, it would have been like a two, just because we literally had not got rid of anybody who didn't need to be there. We hadn't made any signings. Things have picked up and things were looking very good. I think they still look good. I think we're still missing a few additional pieces right now. So the backup goalkeeper, obviously, we've recouped our funds from the signing that we made with Maximiano, despite him not playing an entire season, which was fantastic for us on that point of view. He went back to Spain. So we need a backup goalkeeper. So we've been in talks with Loris for a few weeks now, and that was supposed to go good. Fortunately, today it's come out. He just said no. Like I'm not being a backup goalkeeper. I would have loved to see it because I think it was a smart move, and I think we were pushing for it for the fact of Champions League, for the fact of let's get someone in here who we don't have to put too much pressure on Providel. We could be playing upwards of 50 plus games this season. So having Providel play just Serie A would have been feasible. Having Loris play the cup competitions and Champions League with that experience would be massive. That didn't happen. So now it looks like we're signing Sepe, which is just, it's whatever. If we sign Consigli, if we sign Sepe, if we sign whoever else on the same level of just, it's a true backup. It is what it is. So that's on that side, that's one signing that's probably going to take place very shortly. And then in the center midfield, I was kind of hoping for one more signing. There's been so many talks back and forth. We have Akpro, who's supposed to move on, and we had Basic and Marcus Antonio. Actually, there's three guys that we've been trying to find new homes because with Rovella coming in, Marcus Antonio no longer has even a backup spot at CDM because we have Cataldi and Rovella. In center mid, we were trying to get rid of Akpro, that like one last guy who's just floating around, who's going to go to Empoli, Monza, Verona, one of those teams. And then the last guy is Basic, who we've been trying to. There's the talks of a swap deal of sending him to Udinese, bringing in Samardzic, which would have been, again, if we would have signed Samardzic and Loris, I would have given, I'll say it right now, Lazio's market a 10. 10 out of 10, no issue. Now looking at it, if we're not going to sign a center midfielder, we're going to sign Sepe as a backup goalkeeper. I could probably say like an 8.5 on a good day, depending on how these players perform. Again, it's a big risk. We signed some like good talent within Italy, which is like a massive thing after seeing what like our failed experiences with people like Vavro or Murici for 20 million that we got from abroad and came here and did not transpire to anything. Now we've actually gotten proven talent who's played in Serie A or is Italian, which is good. The only kind of concerns again that come to mind, and especially after seeing him play in the opening round, and I know it's the opening round, but Isaacson came from Denmark as well. Similar situation to I don't know how well you guys know the situation with Vavro, but we signed a center back from Denmark. I think it was 2, 3, 4 years ago, whenever it was, for over 10 million, and it kind of just came out of the blue as this guy was one of the best defenders and came here to Rome and could not fit it, went straight back. So my concern again is we signed the best attacker in the Danish league last year. But is he enough to cut it? Is he going to be good enough? He's he's 21, 22. That's fine, but he's got to perform because last weekend was a very, very mediocre. It kind of just seemed like he didn't know what to do. Like he got the ball and was kind of didn't even want to take on a man, which was very interesting because after watching the highlights and seeing what he did against Lazio, he's so full of confidence. So there's always a risk with bringing those guys in from abroad. So I'd like to be on the cautious side of things and probably say around an 8. I'm right now. I would give their Mercato.
I totally get the backup keeper thing, especially where you guys are sitting too, is something where it makes more of a difference than you might think it would, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And like it's one of those things, it's a mental thing too, because there were talks of, okay, well, if we bring in Loris, then what's that going to do to the locker room? Like, is Providel okay with it? Like, there were reports of like, oh, they've had the conversations with him, he's okay with it. But the best goalkeeper of the year last year, going, okay, yeah, I'm just going to give you the reins to play in the Champions League while I sit here and just play in Italy still. That was the one thing that seemed a little bit odd to me. But again, was Providel's season one of which Lazio's defenses performed very well, so he looked good too. Obviously, he made some good saves. Is this season is he going to replicate his form? There's so many ifs, and like we're really relying on him to be the super Ivan that we saw last year. And if things go south, my issue is that we now have Luigi Sepe as a backup goalkeeper. If that's going to be who comes in, and with all due respect, he's not a Loris. He's not a top name
yeah.
like someone else that we could have, right? So
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see what happens if it is the final move that they go with, and let's just hope for the best and that he stays healthy and he's able to perform like last year. Because I'd be okay with what he did, because last year he did make a lot of key saves, but we also got a lot of solid defensive performances out of Romagnoli and Cazzale. So I think that was very vital to why he experienced so much success last year.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I wanted to ask you before we go into the some predictions and so on of the match, but how do you see Serie A? Meaning, you said last year, obviously, Lazio was not expected to finish second, but what do you think is going to be whatever it depends if you want to do the whole 20 or the top, whatever. But
20's tough. I always, I even do this at the start of every single season. I sit down with my nono and my cousin, and we do the top seven, and then we do the three relegation teams. So we're waiting until the Mercato is done, because now it's a little bit weird, because we do it and then teams sign big players, and then it gets. I've said it already on a podcast. I think this year I think is going to be one of the more competitive leagues, I think, near the top that we've seen in a very long time, just due to the fact that everyone lost four pieces. Napoli lost their best center back, Lazio lost their best midfielder, Inter lost strikers, attackers, goalkeepers, everything you can name. Everyone. Milan lost Tonali. Like, everyone has lost a big player except for Juve, you could probably say. But again, I said this as a joke. I said, who do they have to lose? Obviously, Kessa's coming back is a big one for them. Vlahovic is, since he is now officially staying, a big one. Roma, same type of deal. They always go out there and they buy these 6-7 names that are well known around the world of calcio, but when you put them together, when you put them into the team, they just they fizzle out and become an average player, just like we've seen over the years. They always do this and say, "We're at the best Mercato ever." Roma's going to win the Scudetto this year, and that's always
the Mourinho effect,
joke.
anyway.
It's always the Mourinho effect. And again, if I was Roma, if Mourinho doesn't finish top four this year, Mourinho's gone. I would not even think that he's going to be there for long. But overall, it's going to be a tight one. I think top four race is going to be like very massive. I think the Milanese squads are still going to be up there. I think Napoli's going to be up there. I think this whole talk about Juve, just because they don't have European competition, they're going to be finishing top four. I think that's like a far stretch. I think they have not done enough on the Mercato this year. Again, I could be proven wrong in the next week or two if they decide to go out and sign someone. But
of course,
I think they're trying to stay very clean and very how should I say this, legal on the market, and try to make back their money and not go splashing cash, which is why we're seeing a lot of sales happen, which good for them. They finally got to play fair, which is good to see. But finally finishing top four, I think, is a little bit of a stretch for them still. But that fourth place spot, I think, between the likes of Lazio, Roma, Atalanta, Juve, I think that is where like the whole Europa League, Champions League, like the difference between the two is going to come down to like point by point. Where last season, Napoli was like far in a stretch. I can't see a season like that. I think it's going to be one of those tighter campaigns where everyone's taking points off of each other this time around.
Which is good also from a competition standpoint.
Absolutely.
No offense to any Napoli fan, but obviously that stretch that they had was a little bit like in those days of Juve, we're like, okay, it's becoming boring. I'm watching from the second downwards.
My childhood was Juve winning, which I don't like to remember, but also just in general, I'd say the same thing, and maybe other fans would not say this, but for me, just as a league as a whole, and just for like the competitive things side of things, like I like to see that in the last 4 years there've been 4 different winners. I don't like to see the same team repeat, even if it's my team. I would not like to see Lazio win every single year. Like I couldn't be like a Juve fan where it's like the last 10 years we've just won like a Bayern Munich. Like a Bayern Munich fan is just okay, you win the German league every year. Okay, congrats. Like, what do
Yeah.
you want, right? Like that's it. Like, it's not even like you have a two-headed horse race where it's like, Real or Barca or Atletico, just the
Right.
same team every single year, right? Like, there's no fun in that. So I kind of like where you spice it up. Like Napoli winning last year, I think was very good for the league. Same thing with Milan, and Inter. Like just from even a marketing perspective, I know a lot of people go, "Why are you talking about this side of things?" But it is. It's important. Like that's why
It is.
Calcio was able to stay around and be so prominent. That's what we need from the league, especially with what's going on just with the economy in Italy, with which is going on in the TV rights and the broadcast rights side of things. You need these random players to come out of nowhere, like Team and Kvaratskhelia last year, where no one had even known their name before last year. Now they were the face of the league for the entire season. Like that's the stuff that's going to bring us back to the top. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, fortunately, you can look at it both ways. Especially with what's going on in Saudi and the Prem, like things are
Well,
definitely changing over here.
Prem for sure is our biggest competitor, and that's the one that we have to look up to. Now, the question mark about Saudi is I don't know where that's going to head because it's a tough
I
one.
think it's I actually saw someone say something where it was like they're leveling the playing field because they're taking all the top talent from all the other leagues, but not too much from Italy. So they're leveling the playing field. So I like it. Continue to do it. But for them, they're just going to take the top players, from the top names. I kind of feel like they took
Yeah.
the players obviously that have the African ties. They were going to fit in very well there. So that's why you've seen so many of them go. But yeah, like on that side of things, if they're going to continue to do that, good for us a little bit. We'll see. Hopefully, Italian clubs are able to thrive in Europe again. Who knows?
Great question. I'm going to ask everyone now onwards, but are you going to watch at all their league?
I said it at first as a joke before everyone started to go there because Milinkovic was one of the first players to go, if I'm not mistaken. Like
I
that was
think so.
kind of just like he was one of them at the beginning where it was like going back and forth for so long. Like I look at he went to Al Hilal. He was one of
Yes.
the first ones to go there. I think after like Neves and Koulibaly, I think they were the first two that went. But
Yeah.
I said, as a joke, I'm gonna watch every Al Hilal game. I'm gonna support Sergey, and everyone was like, "What do you mean you're gonna do that?" And I'm like, "Well, the guy's played with us for 7 8 years. Like, that's like part of my, I've got his jersey, for example. Like, that's a part of my childhood growing up is watching him play. So would I like to? Will I watch it? Probably not. but it is what it is. It might have to come to that. We'll see what happens. Maybe the Super League starts to come around again. Maybe Saudi's coming back. Because to be fair, I look at Al Hilal starting 11, and 7 of those 11 guys are top
I
players.
mean,
So
it's like super solid.
yeah, yeah, I'm telling you that team would compete in any league you throw them into probably right now, like
Yeah.
easily. So
Oh, you mean
it's
like
a whole different thing,
PSG?
right?
You mean like PSG?
Yeah, so that's a different. I think we're starting to see the rise we saw, and I think we're seeing the fall of that, especially even more so if Mbappe
Totally.
eventually leaves. I think that again, I think we saw that the rise and fall of the Chinese league, we saw the rise and fall of PSG, and now Saudi's here. Differences, I don't think don't think the fall will ever happen. So I think that's just gonna stay on the rise.
Yeah.
More eyes will get
I
towards
have,
that. I'd like to see.
I
There's
definitely
like
have to agree with you.
there's a intrigue for sure with the league. I think people that are saying they're not ever gonna watch, it's like, well, yeah, but like, do you see how
You'll
loaded
see.
these are?
So it's like the way I'd put it is, when TikTok happens, everyone's like, don't want to get another video platform, don't want to get another social media platform. When Threads happens, don't want to get another social media platform.
Right.
And then if you don't do it, you're the last to it, and you feel out of it. So
Right.
now, everyone's staying true and loyal right now, but I guarantee you next summer I could probably see like they're gonna open the restrictions of the rules, or they'll see what other things they can, get around, and you're gonna see probably like twice the amount of players that came this summer go next summer if things all go to plan for them, right? Like this has definitely been something on their minds for many months, many years, probably even. So
Yeah.
there's a plan, there's a real tangible plan, and they have all the money in the world to be able to fund it and do it. So
And new
don't see it
stadiums,
going anytime
brand new
soon.
spanking stadiums.
Brand new everything, brand new house, brand new cars, brand new this, brand new that.
Yeah.
Living lavish.
Bottom three, Stephen.
Bottom three. It's a tough one.
It's a tough guess. I know. I guess at this point it's like hard, but
The bottom three, I'm gonna have to go with. I think Hellas Verona needs to go down, so I'm
Right
gonna put
behind it
them there. I'm gonna put them as one of the teams. I don't know what order this is gonna happen in though. So I'm going Verona. I will say I'm from Frosinone, but I don't think they have I don't think they have enough to stay up again this year. So I think Frosinone is gonna be there. And then the last one is gonna be
be gentle.
I'm tossing and turning between. I'd even like to throw even Sassuolo or even like an Udinese, but I can't see them I can't see them dropping. So I think I have to go with one of the other promoted sides, like Cagliari or Genoa. I don't know if I'm gonna go with right now. I'm leaving it as a tie break. I'll come back. I'll come back to it after the Mercato's done. I can't say any final words right now, but I think Verona for sure. I think Frosinone is like a 70-80% chance, and then the other team is going to be a toss and turn up. I'll give you my final prediction afterwards. We'll give it back afterwards.
Well, Stephen, your time.
I'll throw you one more team there. What about Empoli?
Again, I gotta wait to see what they do because like again, that one player, that two player, that it just makes such a big impact. So like Empoli's another team I kind of have down in there. Like the Udinese, the Empoli, and Sassuolo are kind of above the Genoa and Cagliari, but I think it could be like any one of those five teams that eventually goes. Tough. It's a tough one. I don't think so. I think Salernitana, like they're going to be a regular now. I think for the next little bit. I think Lazio's B team is finally emerged from being Lazio's B team. So I think they've got an identity of their own. I like what they've done on the Mercato over recent years. They've done enough to stay above the pack. So I think they definitely got a lead on the other ones that were just mentioned there.
Yeah, I have to agree. Unfortunately, I think there's enough in that squad, and they put enough investment in it over the last several years that it kind of looks like a proper Serie A squad at this point.
Now it does, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so deep dive into match day 2. So this is the last match before the end of this super extremely long calciomercato, which everybody's talking about to have it chopped at least for, I don't know, by end of, some people say end of July or whatnot. But anyways, 2 months is way too long.
Way too long.
So the first the openers for the week, match day 2, we have Frosinone Atalanta on Saturday. What do you guys think about that one?
Sorry.
That's all right. So
the opener against Frosinone and who?
Frosinone versus Atalanta. So Frosinone comes from the loss at home against Napoli, while Atalanta comes from the clean sheet win of that great match against Sassuolo at Sassuolo. So now
I just did the Scadina yesterday with Nono, so I'm gonna have to stick with it. So I can go through it, but Atalanta is gonna take that one, I think.
Yeah,
I think they're gonna take it with ease.
I have to agree. It's hard to see Frosinone getting much out of that match.
Yeah, I'm going to third that, not second that, but third that, based also what Steven said before. Frosinone is going to have a tough year, and obviously their start with Napoli first and now Atalanta, it's not going to be definitely easy for them, and I do see a win, obviously, from Atalanta perspective, and I think Scamacca is going to have a great year.
Hey, well, let's hope for the Azzurri, because I keep hearing that Immobile needs to go so Scamacca can come in, but as far as I'm concerned, Scamacca has done all but nothing to prove that as of yet. So I think this is his, again, one of those years for him and a player like that where it's got to be your year, because if not, you will be forgotten. So I think he's got a big year to prove himself.
Next match, still on Saturday, same time, we have Monza-Empoli.
I see a draw in this game. I think it's going to be a tight one. Monza obviously is playing at home, so I would give them home advantage, but I think Empoli is they're going to do enough to scrape a point out on the away travel there.
Yeah,
to add some context there, Empoli had lost at home against Verona, and Monza had lost, obviously, in Milan against Inter.
It does feel like those teams are almost like exactly as we were talking about before, in such a similar category, like there's something there, but none of it really inspires a whole lot of confidence. I would maybe put the edge to Monza just a little bit, I think, of those two, but I don't know. I could see the points shared between the two teams.
Again, who knows what happens, because Muriel, if he goes there, right? Like if Muriel comes from Atalanta, if Patania leaves, like that changes the dynamic of the attack completely. So
definitely true.
Yeah.
Totally true. But it's still Calcio d'Agosto. I understand that everything can go belly up or belly down, but I want to give the edge to Monza, because I think, at least from the roster perspective, they definitely have higher quality. They perhaps just need. They gave also a good response also in the second half from last year, but maybe a very small win, but maybe 1-0. I see Monza winning. Next one up is Verona against Roma. So Verona, as we said before, was won at Empoli, and Roma, not to the levels, in offense here, of course, not to the levels of Lazio, but were winning, then they got recuperated, then they were almost losing, and then they actually ended up tying against Salernitana.
Yeah, so I, again, have a tie on this one. I think Verona's going to ride the tide, playing at home after coming off a win. And I think we're coming off, I think we're going to see the Roma that people don't want to see, but we're all expecting to see. I think it's going to be one of those tight games, or I might be completely wrong and Roma's going to thrash them, but I'm going to stick with my point and I'm going to say a draw for them.
I feel like, I mean, Mourinho's had his moments, and he's definitely had, you can maybe argue, is it going to work, is it going to not? But this is probably almost a similar match for them in the sense that, like, they need to get off the ground before the season starts too much. And I would expect a little bit more from them in this match than what they showed in Salernitana, albeit Salernitana is a decent side themselves. So I kind of think Roma will get this one, but I mean, who knows? Maybe this team is more than just sleepwalking into the beginning of the season. Maybe there's really more significant gaps there than people realize.
They were missing a few players, I'll give them that, but still gotta bet on the opposite of what we want to see from them.
On my side, I know that Steven has a little bit of bias in there, and that's why he went a little bit heavy against Roma. From my perspective, agreeing with you, seeing Verona being a tough, one of the biggest contenders for relegation. Having said that, does not mean they're going to lose all matches, but we saw what they also did last year, and nothing majorly happened from the transfer market perspective. So sadly, from a Laziali perspective, but I think Roma is going to win on this one, not only because you have the Mourinho yo-yo effect that is probably just going to be on a peak instead of the downfall, but obviously we have a very weak Verona against him. Next one, great match at Milano, Milan versus Torino.
I think Pioli and Milan continue to thrive. I think I'm going to give Milan just an easy win. Torino, again, was held to a draw, if I'm not mistaken.
At Cagliari.
Cagliari, yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Home to Cagliari, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think over the years as well, I think Milan is just going to have the edge. The new signings are making an impact already. We saw what they were able to do in that first game. At least we put the game to bed against Bologna in the first half. I think it'll be something similar. I think they just got too much quality in attack right now. So until someone is able to put their foot down and stop them, I'm riding with Milan for a little bit.
That 1-2 Pulisic with Giroud was fantastic. Just like phenomenal.
It was pretty amazing.
As if they played together like for years.
As if.
No, I was just going to say it's the Pulisic combination is a question mark. I know being in America, obviously it's a big deal anytime he does anything over here. But I think there was a little bit of that kind of like, is he going to get off the ground running or not? Being in not the best place at Chelsea over the last several years. But I think when you compare their attacking force versus Torino, who's starting Sanabria, who we remember from our days, it's kind of hard to argue against Milan getting this one.
I can't add more than that, even though I respect a lot Juric as, again, another former Genoa.
Also true, yeah.
I have to say that also to Steven's point, out of all the top 4 or 5 teams, Milan was the one that after that sale of Tonali did an amazing, fantastic transfer market. So, and we have seen them actually in action and doing all pretty well. So yeah, I see actually a clean win of Milan versus Torino. Next one, Juventus at home against Bologna. So after the win of Juventus at Udine, even though they're like, claiming of this great win, I'm not sure about Udinese. You can hear that we're not a Juve fan, but against Bologna, that actually did have that clear. I mean, they did play very well, but Milan was way too strong. So this is at Torino.
Bologna played like we were watching that game live. Like Bologna was playing well. I know they hit the bar in the first minute. Like if that goes in, that completely changes the game around. They had 2 penalty shouts. Again, those go in. Completely different game before halftime. But in this case, like I got to give it to Juve. Again, at home, I think Bologna is going to start the season 0-2. I think Juve is going to start at 2-0. They've got a better team, just on paper and just in general with their play right now.
Yeah, Juve, I think this is one of those things. I do think Serie A is going to be interesting this season because while there's a lot of really, really interesting competition at the top of the table, I don't think there's as much parity when you compare the top to the middle of the table. And so a lot of these matches, you're going to look at it, and there's too much of a gap there, I think, between those teams for it to really be super competitive. But in a way, it might make the bottom half even more interesting as well, because Bologna is one of those teams that wouldn't be totally shocking if they were kind of among the teams trying to fight for to stay up at the end of the season.
I kind of have to go with that as well, even though I can see also a tie possibly, because Bologna obviously is it would be their second loss in a row, even though against big teams. And Juve, I wasn't too convinced of their win, even though it was a clean win. I do see Juve win, but I can foresee that there can be perhaps a tie. Not too sure about that, but let's see. So that was on a Sunday again. The other ones were all Saturday. This was on Sunday. The next one on Sunday is Fiorentina Lecce. So Fiorentina, unfortunately, we have saw them last week against Lecce, which unfortunately you guys have seen them win. Win, exactly. Fiorentina Lecce.
Fiorentina actually plays tomorrow in the Conference League. And that's another interesting factor to pull into it. Before even knowing that, though, I think they, on paper and tactically, I think it's a very intriguing lineup. Just with the quality and the pace that Lecce brings, and also what Fiorentina is able to do in attack with what we know as Italiano ball to date. But I could probably see a tie happening just because Fiorentina is playing 3 games in basically 2 weeks. And obviously at the start of the season, that could be good, could be bad. Depending on the depth that they have. They do have some depth, but I can kind of see Lecce pushing them and pushing for a draw in this one.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a sneaky, exciting match on the fixture list this week, because Lecce, as you mentioned, both teams kind of coming in obviously with 3 points in the first match, but 23 total shots too against Lazio. That's crazy that they even registered that many. I don't know if that's a legit statistic or not, but
yeah, no, they did. They were all over us, and it was just a matter of time. Maybe for the one, I didn't expect the 2, but it was just a matter of time before they found the back of the net.
Yeah, I think this one will be interesting. We couldn't really get past their midfield at all. I think Lecce's style of play is pretty different than ours anyway, but it'll be interesting to see how the 2 teams shape up. It could be a really open match though, so that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, you're right. At first I was thinking maybe Fiorentina would have had closed eyes, the win, the edge over Lecce and so on. But even though I do see them as contenders for based on transfer market, based on whom, even their past season and so on, from this match against Lecce, I don't know if it's very high beams that we don't really see them for what they really are, and maybe it's just that culture that goes with that for them is going very well. But this is probably one of the few that I would give a tripleta, meaning that it could go either way. Now, having said that, winning at Firenze may be the least of the likelihood, but nevertheless, if you get a very tired Fiorentina with the amount of matches that they're playing in the next few days, it could technically happen. I'll skip the Lazio Genoa. Napoli Sassuolo on Sunday as well. So you have Napoli with a nice clean win, and Sassuolo with a loss against Atalanta.
Yeah, and I think they're continuing with a nice clean win over Sassuolo. I think Sassuolo's, again, I think that's one of those teams who's going to have one of the bigger drops I can kind of see this season, especially with Berardi's future, in limbo. What he's done this summer has been extremely weird, from going to I'm completely dedicated to no, I've never agreed anything with Juve, to I'm going to join Lazio, I might join Napoli, to then on his birthday coming out and saying, hey, you know what, it's gonna be a good season if I stay here. And then now there's talks of he's trying to push the Juve move, but Laziali and the president have just put down, you're not going anywhere, it's past the point. I think it's going to be a rocky situation at Sassuolo, and I don't think they're going to have enough to kind of maybe even survive this year in the top flight. We'll see what happens, but I think Napoli's going to walk all over them again.
Yeah, the Sassuolo this season for such a long time they were kind of this stalwart in Serie A, where they seemed to really be shrewd with who they were recruiting, and they had a really good system as well of developing players, and there's not as much that's kind of sexy about the squad this season. And so I think obviously this particular match, it doesn't look very bright for them, but it'll be interesting to see if this is really maybe one of their last in Serie A. I'm sure they'll come back if they do go down, but it doesn't look that great for the weekend though.
And using your words, Matt, the only sexy of Sassuolo that they have this year is the purchase that they got from us, the 18-year-old midfielder that they got from our Primavera. but
I know.
that shows you, to your point, that they're not really what happened to their youth growth when they have to go and touch into different youth systems from different teams and so on. Anyways, I don't know. It's a tough one. I agree with you guys that where Sassuolo seems to be a little bit on the lower trend, but I think that they might give difficulties to Napoli, but I still see Napoli winning.
Yeah, to put, like, I'm just looking at some quick stats. The last 3 games, Napoli scored 12 goals against Sassuolo, and Sassuolo has scored 1. So I'm going to continue that trend.
Okay, Monday games. We have Salernitana against Udinese. So Salernitana, we talked about it before with the tie against Roma, and Udinese, that brutal loss against Juventus.
Yeah, this one's another tough one that, as you mentioned, can go either way. Whenever I'm like kind of in this mindset, I like to just say a tie. So I will continue to stick with what I usually do. I think Salernitana, apart from Kendreva's masterclass, shout out to former Lazio player. I think apart from that, it was kind of an average performance. I think Udinese, coming off that loss, is going to want to try to get back something even despite being away. So I can kind of see a tie coming out, and then maybe the home side will edge out a win potentially, but I'll try to stick with a tie on this one.
Yeah, I think a tie is a sensible prediction. I mean, it does have a weird feeling though, doesn't it? There's something about it that makes you kind of feel like Udinese might get a narrow victory out of the match itself. I mean, it's a weird squad too. It's another one where you just kind of, there's some players that are interesting. We've got Tovan up front. You've got a couple other guys. I could see it happening. I think Salernitana is probably actually the better team. But I don't know. Maybe you do see sort of the odd, awkward goal or something, and it does end in a narrow victory for Udinese. But it's a close one for sure.
I agree with you guys. Like Udinese did a very strange market. They got these players from EPL, but we know where they came from. But at the same time, Salernitana, on the paper, as we said before, seems like the better team. I think it's like a tie written all over it, as you guys said. So I'm not saying anything really more than what you said. So I'll just skip to the next one. Next one, the second last, is Cagliari-Inter on Monday. We saw Cagliari that had the tie at Torino, and Inter with the win against Monza.
Yeah, again, I think Inter is one of the stronger sides who's going to be competing for a top 3 spot this year, and I think for most games you're going to want to give Inter the victory unless they're facing another top side, and even so, you still might want to give them the win. I think the biggest question mark is, can Thuram kind of replicate the success that not Correa, he's actually gone, but Lautaro Martinez has had with other players like Lukaku, with Chaco. Obviously, they lost both of them. So if Thuram is able to do what he's supposed to be doing, I think, again, Inter is going to look very lethal this year. I actually have them as my Scudetto winner as of current, but that could change again depending on what happens over the next week.
Yeah, lots of kind of interesting Bundesliga Serie A moves. Thuram being one of them. I think you got to put Inter as the favorite in this match. It's part of what makes this season really intriguing, because you do have so many key players that are kind of coming in and out, and we'll see how they actually kind of come together with these new guys stepping in and trying to carry the torch.
I'm going to add a little curveball there, saying Ranieri still always surprises us, even though at your age, you still have to play against him. Essentially, he's like the 12th man a lot of times, with also the miracles that he did in Serie B to bring Cagliari back up, which no one was even expecting it to have it happen until the last second. Nevertheless, it's at Cagliari, so we always know that going over there, it's always tough, even though they are neopromossa. So obviously, from similar to our perspective as a team itself, it makes it a little bit simpler, but it's not your neopromossa like your Carpi type of thing. It's a Cagliari, which, similar to Genoa, differently actually, but they got relegated right at the last match, if I'm not mistaken, or second last, or I think it was the last one. But anyways, what I'm trying to say with this is going to be tough for Inter. I think that Inter will need to step up in order if they want to win the league, but I actually see a tie on this one.
Famous Unipol Domus Stadium. I can't believe
I think it's that interim stadium until they finish their stadium.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right to have a Cagliari, one of the most Italian names in the league, and then you play at the Unipol Stadium.
I know.
Doesn't sound too right, does it? might as well call them Calgary at this point. Like everyone else.
I know. That's a big insurance company. Anyways, last but not least, the highlight of match day 2 is Lazio Genoa, or at least for the three of us.
Yeah.
So Lazio, as we know, comes out from a loss against Lecce at Lecce, playing in at the Olimpico against Genoa, which their opener was against Fiorentina at home, which they lost 4-1, and now having to travel down to Roma.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you guys, as I mentioned before, because I think this one's going to be very similar to your first game. I think you guys don't deserve it, but I think Lazio's going to come out, and I think at home at the Olimpico, I think it's not going to be pretty. I think the first half is going to be one of those 2-3-0, and maybe you guys will kind of get a goal in the final 15 or so. But I kind of see us seeing it as a very, very easy win, fortunately or unfortunately for you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm similarly concerned as a Genoa fan. I think Stephen, you talked about the head-to-head earlier, which actually is kind of impressive. It's shared pretty much. It's 11 wins apiece and 4 draws in the last several matches we've had in Serie A. But the recent scorelines are not good at all. I don't think we've won a game since 2019, maybe going back a ways. And I think the biggest thing to look for in this one is the Fiorentina match was the first one really where Genoa looked like they were totally tactically not prepared, or maybe just didn't react appropriately. And I think in this situation, it's going to be really important to see how can we right the ship? How can we maybe get more out of it? I would imagine at the end of the day, maybe Genoa look a little bit better, but the quality from Lazio shines through, and it's a 2-0 victory probably to Lazio is what I would predict.
I'm always trying to be positive, obviously based on my faith, but definitely Gilardino is going to have a shaker with respects to the tonfo, as we say in Italian, like the bad match that he predicted or he prepared against Fiorentina. I think he's not going to make this mistake, also because it could be if the loss is going to be similar to the Fiorentina match, could be a start of talks in general about his if he belongs to Serie A as a coach.
I think he's got a lot to prove, I think, this year, and facing off against someone who like a Sarri, who has a few more matches under his belt, and especially at this level. Again, I think it says a bunch. Like walking away, if you guys look at this a week from now and go, we lost 4-1 again to Lazio, you might start to think, is it possible? Are we going to see him be one of the first that are going to leave the benches this year, type of thing? So
it's definitely a possibility, right? So I'm sure all these thoughts are going through his mind, and he definitely needs to prepare this match way differently compared to how he had prepared it with Fiorentina. If our usual form module was 3-5-2, talks are that we are going to with
Malinowski
now coming into play, and I believe he's going to be ready for the match as well. Talks are that the module might not change too much, but it's going to change only on the trequartista, so happening instead of a 3-5-2, as I said before, it's going to be a 3-5-2-1. So having Albert Gudmundsson coming a little bit more backwards as a trequartista, joint together with Malinkovic. Having said that, I still do think that Lazio is going to have an edge over Genoa, just because the power of this team against us. We are a Neopromossa. We have to remember that. Our aim is for 40 points. And even though we have to play to win, at times it's going to happen, see Lecce, and at times it's not going to happen, thanks to Lecce that made Lazio too angry, and Roma. But I'm hoping not to see a Lazio running all over us, but it will be a win for Lazio, like a 1-0 difficult match, but a win by Lazio.
Honestly, I would take 1-0 in a heartbeat. If you were telling me we lose 1-0 and we come back from getting, it wasn't embarrassing, but it was kind of embarrassing, the opening match. Showing like that, we need that much more. Obviously, Fabry, you know better than anyone. If this is another cakewalk, 2-0, I think, is an expectation. If you start seeing it 4 goals, 5 goals that we're conceding, there's going to be a borderline mutiny come our third match of the season, which is not great, even though we're already playing 2 really strong sides in Serie A. So it's kind
It's
of
what,
it's a weirdly important one. I mean, I don't think we're going to get points out of it. I just think we need to have ideas that look like we can cope with more
Have a
kind
good
of.
game. Like you guys have made though, like in general, I think you guys have made some quality signings, whether it be
Yeah,
Retzegui, whether it be Malinovsky, Macias. Like you guys have those
agreed.
the names. The biggest concern is like when I see one of these teams get back up after going down to Serie B is they really try to reinforce the attack as much as possible, but they kind of forget about what is behind that. So we go really attack heavy, and that's where kind of the downfalls come into play. Like just like you kind of see what's going on in the Saudi Pro League. Like you have all these guys coming in attackers,
Yeah,
big shining stars or whatever. But if you can have Ronaldo and you can have Messi, you can have everyone you want up top. But if you have a very very average, subpar average backline and goalkeeper, you're gonna feel the pain no matter what. It's one of those things that I think if you guys have a good game, I think that's the most important thing is like keep it the 1 to 2 max, try to get some sort of like a free flowing play going, try to possess the ball, make those passes and those combinations. I think you guys would be happy with that.
what's the weakest point that the Lazio has to be careful of?
The weakest point of Lazio, I think a very surprising thing we saw on matchday 1 was Patrick starting over Casale. There was no injury concerns. Casale was obviously Romagnoli's, the 1 and 2 in center back last year, but for whatever reason, Patrick was called upon and played the entire game. If I am not mistaken, I don't even know. Near the end of the game, I was in another world. Let's go with that. So. I think if Patrick does play, I think the weak point is cross balls into the box. And not winning those aerial battles because time and time again he's out of position or he's missing the header or he's not going up and winning the battles that he's supposed to be doing. So like that center back piece, and again if Laziali's next to him, we have basically a right wing back who could maybe even arguably play, as Manono says, a higher up of the pitch with Laziali playing as a right back on the defensive side, which a lot of fans are kind of getting upset, and rightfully so, but it's just not his formation. So the 4-3-3 playing as a right back is just not. He's not a Di Lorenzo. He's not someone who can be that solid figure who's able to get forward and come back and be solid on defense. It's not the type of player he is. So attacking on your left side, if Laziali and Patrick play as the right back and right center back, is like the best way you guys are going to experience success. We saw Lecce do it time and time again. Banda's quick, Laziali is quick as well, but Banda was taking him every single day. Marusic also looked very, very average. Again, I think his name is Umquist, who, again, this guy just came in out of nowhere. No one knew who he was, and Marusic made him look like he was the next Kvaratskhelia, if we want to even go to that extent. Left-footed cutting off the flank. He beat him every single time he took the ball up to the pitch on the right-hand side. I think your left side attacking, our right side on defending is where you guys are going to be able to find success if it is Patrick and Laziali on that side.
Okay, so I guess we're at a wrap. I wanted to give you the opportunity again to talk quickly and mention your platforms where people can reach out to you and if they want to get that the kit tool and so on.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my personal, I'm primarily on Twitter. So at S_K_more. My name is Steven again. So I'm cover Lazio. I have my Lazio brand called the Laziali that covers Lazio news in English, transfer news. We got the pre-match stuff, post-match stuff, everything that happens throughout the week. And then on the entrepreneurial side, as you mentioned before, I've started up Display Pro. So Display Pro Shop everywhere on social media, but displaypro.shop is the website where you're able to get these jersey displays and display your Genoa merch or your Calcio merch that you want to put up on the walls, whether it be a t-shirt or a jersey. It fits everything with the 2 sizes, small or large. So yeah.
And on all platforms, right?
All platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok we're trying to venture on to. But we're there as well on Display Pro Shop. Yeah, that's where you can find us.
That's awesome. We wanted to thank you very much for coming as our guest. We really enjoyed having you and talking about Calcio finally after this long summer and so on. Sad that we have to meet you right now, right at the beginning of the season, that we don't have our pieces in place yet. But some people say better to get them away immediately rather than having them later. But at the same time, may the best win.
Absolutely.
Anyways, so thank you again for coming, Steven. We'll definitely put all your socials and the website also on our platforms. So for anybody who's listening to us, so you can always drop us a comment, put us a like on all the same platforms that you mentioned before, except we're not on TikTok yet. But so Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But thank you once again. And as we always say, never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.